The Totalitarian Two-Step by Dennis C. Jansen, as read by Bonnie Jansen. Chapter 6. What did John Connally mean when he stated, "The dollar is our currency, but it is your problem"? America's biggest export is dollars, and China is the biggest victim of this funny money fraud. Imagine you had a whole bunch of American consumers out there, and they want to live beyond their means. So they buy a large number of Chinese goods on a credit card. The debt stays in America, but all those new banknotes that we created out of thin air go over to China. The Chinese company that supplies these goods then takes all these new currency notes and takes them to its bank and exchanges them for the local currency, such as the Yuan. The bank does not have that much cash to change for these new circulated American notes. So it goes ahead and prints a whole bunch of Yuan notes and deposits them into the Chinese company bank account. The bank then takes all those crisp new American notes and puts them in their foreign reserve account. Now the Chinese company puts that currency into circulation into a financial system's economy. This equates to a finite amount of goods and services within that system being chased by more currency, and therefore the price rises. This spike in inflation is much more prevalent in poorer countries or emerging markets, where a significant percentage of the population is peasants or heavily involved in manufacturing employment. When inflation runs hot, food prices and commodity prices are priced worldwide using US dollars. Except for war and worldwide hardship, America produces very little, so it must import goods and export all these dollars outside the country. This leads to ever-growing debts and what is called a debt-based economy. Basically, an economy that relies on debt and imports to keep the economic wheels turning, finances being consumed, whether it be government or the consumer, by tricking or even threatening poor or frightened countries, which are dumb enough to supply their hard manufacturers and valuable goods or commodities in exchange for this fiat currency. The foreign countries find themselves inundated with US dollars, and as prices rise, the pieces of paper become less and less valuable as the volume of them starts to increase at an explosive level. As America exports more and more currency overseas, inflation will rise higher and higher in all those countries that are essentially propping up the American financial system by exporting their manufactured goods or commodities. Through an increase in the currency supply and the Federal Reserve Bank artificially holding rates down, Americans can enjoy a standard of living, but they clearly cannot afford it. What essentially happens is if interest rates are supposed to be 10%, but they are being held down to 5%, it means that you can take twice the amount of debt and still have the same ability to service it when the interest rate was 10%. Currently, the interest rate is near zero, and the government is tricking its citizens into believing that things are rosy. But ask yourself the following: why would stimulus currency check, rent moratorium, and or student loan forbearance be needed if the economy was strong? The answer is that most of the economy is weak. The stock market element of the economy is high, and when the rent freeze is thawed and Johnny Common Folk ain't got the currency is when things get ugly and the evictions start. John Prine, the great singer and songwriter, brilliantly wrote and sung in his not well-known enough song, "This is How Every Empire Falls," regarding the empire falling and the police evicting their fellow brothers and sisters. Padlock the door and board the windows. Put the people in the street. It's just my job, he says. I'm sorry. And draws a check. Goes home to eat. But at night he tells his woman, I know I hide behind the laws. She says, you're only taking orders. That's how every empire falls. A situation is brewing as the debt mounts. There will be a tipping point when those countries that are propping up the U.S. by kindly giving them all these goods essentially for free, since they are being paid with what will or has already become near worthless fiat currency, refuse to settle trade using fiat currency. This is where the U.S. is at economically. The government cannot stop giving out stimulus, or the economic engine ceases to run, and the result will be deflationary. The citizens begin to seek populism and start revolting because they have no money to buy food and other staples. President Obama and Trumpster were forms of populism. Remember, change we can believe in and making America great again, presidential campaign slogans. Both were sold as the political outsiders that would make America work for everyone. It is a rising tide, lifts all boats type mentality. However, both failed to materialize, and the wealth gap between common folk and the wealthy grew much broader, and the government became more totalitarian and overreaching. The American greatness did not materialize under their realms, and the debt rose with no end in sight. The next shoe to fall is the rioting for food and other essentials. In the end, exporting countries will stop shipping products to the States if payment is received in fiat currency. When that happens, it means that there will be a lower demand for US dollars, which means that the currency is going to spoil and die. The US will search tirelessly for ways to promote its currency so that people, foreign and domestic, will invest or hold it. They will raise interest rates so that the currency appears more attractive to investors. However, increasing interest rates will adversely hurt the financial markets, real estate appreciation, and grow the national debt. When the currency spirals further and further into oblivion, rates have to go higher and higher and higher to entice suckers into the Ponzi scheme US dollar again. Americans are not good for the debt, and they can barely service the interest. If interest rates were to go up even just a smidge, foreign countries would stop lending to them through the delivery of goods in exchange for nothing. Basically, the U.S. becomes a zombie country, similar to a zombie corporation, which will be discussed later in this book. In summary, the U.S. dollar will fail due to external lack of confidence by exporting nations who correctly realize that the U.S. is scamming them. They will refuse to send their products to the U.S. because they are being paid in worthless currency. This will force the U.S. to settle trade using gold or become an isolationist type country where the government manages nearly all aspects of their citizens' lives. It becomes cradle to grave government management.